You have closing costs, you have costs to close, you have down payment, you have earnest money deposit. Unless you're a licensed realtor, there's no way anyone could possibly know the ins and outs of all of these and what's accurate and what's not. Hey guys, it's Morgan Ferguson, realtor with Damon Gettier Associates, brokered by Real. Today I'm going to kind of touch on the difference between earnest money, escrow, and closing costs. I think sometimes, whether you're a first-time home buyer, second-time, third-time home buyer, it's, the laws and the rules and the contract are constantly changing. So I think a lot of times, again, it's a lot of information to take in. So a lot of times buyers will get, a little confused with everything, but typically we'll start with the earnest money deposit. So once you find a house that you love and you're ready to make an offer, you make the offer, let's say it gets accepted, yay. You go under contract. At that point, that's when your earnest money deposit is due. Typically, we like to see 1 to 2% of the contract price, the sales price. That money is due it goes to the title company. They hold the money in escrow until closing. It's not money lost. It's not a deposit per se, but it's also called a good faith deposit. So it just accompanies your offer. It shows the sellers that you're serious about the offer and serious about the contract, serious about their home, and that you're not going to just default, walk away. Because at that point, that money could potentially be at stake if it's for a reason covered by the terms of the contract. But ultimately, that earnest money deposit is held in escrow at the title company, and it's credited back to you at closing. So it's credited towards your closing costs, your down payment. And then escrow is, we don't use that term a lot here. I don't know if, everyone watches the $1 Million Listings and the Selling Sunsets. And if you've noticed, when they get under contract and they're on the phone with another agent, they're like, oh, we got an escrow. We don't use that term. I think it's like a West Coast thing. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe some agents do. But escrow, I think, if I had to define it, is kind of like just the contract to close, period. So from the time you get under contract to closing. And then closing costs. So if you're doing a mortgage, of course, even if you're a cash buyer, you're still going to have some closing costs. They're not going to be as much. But closing costs basically just covers, the back end of the lender's fees and, other fees, taxes, the counties, the city's fees, insurance. They like to hold some money in insurance, so some of that's included in your closing costs. But typically the lender, we get an estimate of those closing costs before we even make an offer. That way, there's no surprises at the end. Closing costs are, they're just there. They're not going away. But again, we like to get an estimate of that from the lender. That way you just know what to expect. And those are due at the closing table. Earnest money and closing costs, it's not your down payment. So your earnest money, which we've already touched on, and then your closing costs. And then in addition, depending on what type of loan you were doing, if you're doing a loan, you'll have your down payment. But again, I'm not a lender, I'm not licensed to lend money. But again, we work closely with lenders. And so depending on your loan type, you may potentially also have your down payment. Circling back to the closing costs, I think sometimes some people might get confused between your closing costs and your costs to close. Closing costs, depending on the lender or the bank, they categorize their closing costs as one thing and leave some money out when they're calculating that. So you may call one lender and say, to get an estimate on closing costs, let's say on a $300,000 home, and this lender may say, oh, it's X amount of dollars. Then you may call lender, say that's lender A. Then you may call lender B. Lender B is going to say, oh, your closing costs are going to be a couple thousand more maybe. Well, what's being missed here is this lender is giving you your closing costs. This lender is giving you your cost to close. So I think it's just varies from lender to lender, but that's why when we call a lender, like the lender that we have that works in our office, he knows to give us the cost to close. There are some lenders that we work with, even outside of our office, out of the state, so on and so forth, that they don't realize, well, it's not that they don't realize, but they give the buyer the cost to close, not the closing costs. And therefore, you get to the closing table and you owe more money, surprise. And that's what we try to avoid. And that's, again, why you need to just shop very carefully when looking for an agent. So again, it's a lot of information. You have closing costs, you have costs to close, you have down payment, you have earnest money deposit. Unless you're a licensed realtor, there's no way anyone could possibly know the ins and outs of all of these and what's accurate and what's not. So that's why it's important to ask your agent these questions. And if you don't have an agent or don't have an agent that you necessarily trust and you're looking in the Southwest Virginia area, definitely give me a call. I would love to sit down and meet with you. Again, my name is Morgan Ferguson. My number is 540-246-0995. If you like this video, give a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe, and check out our other socials. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.